Good afternoon to you, Scott Baker.
Mikey Ames, how are you on this 4th of September?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm looking forward to talking about this, the unpacking principle. I don't know that I've ever heard this thing talk about under this kind of title. So
Yeah,
maybe
I
we're going to
think,
coin something here.
and this is particularly about the unpacking principle in relationships. And it kind of focuses on this idea of how are you as a leader or a human being connecting and really understanding the other person. And that sounds kind of easy, like, well, what are you interested in? You know, I mean, okay, but there's more to it, and there's more power to it. I just thought about this. I should have looked it up ahead of time, and I didn't. But what was the movie with George Clooney where it was up in the air, and he used the metaphor of the backpack? And it was about career transitions, but that was the only other packing principle thing that it was in my mind. Now, that one was about packing, not unpacking, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the name of that movie, was Up in the Air.
Yes, correct.
Yes,
exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'll have to look that one up.
So starting off with like the way that your doctor should talk to you, right? And really get to know you, right? And the notion that if you get like a diagnosis from somebody without somebody doing a deep dive on who you are, it would probably be considered malpractice, right?
Yes.
So in our field, it's the same kind of thing, right? Why wouldn't you like deeply get to know someone before you make any recommendation?
Yeah. But, I think that's what we know is that doctors really like to spend 11 to 12 seconds deeply getting to know you. You were at a doctor's office today, I believe, weren't you? How did it go?
I sure did. It's my favorite. It's my favorite appointment of the year because I get to actually tell the guy to, cut certain moles off. So it was my dermatologist.
Fun. Yes, right.
Yeah. And
did he care about your soul?
Thing.
Was he really leaning into who you were as a person?
You know what? He asked me how things were going, and I told him, "Oh, I got this diagnosis about my cholesterol, and I didn't really know how to read it." And he said, "Well, what did your doctor say?" And I said, "Well, my doctor just retired, and this young guy who replaced him didn't say anything about it, right?" And he was like, "Well, pull it up. Let's talk about it, right? Because I know I'm just a dermatologist, but I'd love to talk
just
to you about
the dermatologist." Yeah, right.
Right. So he's the way he said it. He's like, "I'm all into the whole longevity stuff."
Sure, great.
So when you hear a dermatologist, a doctor in his own right saying it that way, it's like, okay, maybe there's lots of people listening to Andrew Huberman and the like.
I'll outline here the idea in the field note, which is around this idea of history, knowledge, background, really kind of cultivating sort of a depth where the person kind of feels like you understand them, they understand you. There's a deepness there that is different than just this sort of, well, do like, your coffee black and I know you happen to like playing tennis. That's kind of that level. We're trying to get somewhere, deeper than that. But before we kind of go into this, because I have some recent experiences with some ways of cultivating this, but you brought it the other day, but I think it would be worth re-mentioning in this context, particularly in the way that we set this up, that you have a friend who's a dentist, and I too just got a change in a dentist, like you were getting a change in a doctor. And my new dentist did not do what your friend does, which seems to me to be a very good idea. I
think it's a great idea, and I don't know why more people don't do it. But my dentist friend, Aaron in Phoenix, he was having some issues with patients who were a little bit too high maintenance, right? So he wanted to be able to get to know patients before they even got in the chair so that he could say to these people that he perceived as going to be high maintenance patients, I'm probably not the right person for you. So it was completely motivated by him being able to tell patients, I don't want to be your doctor, right?
Yeah.
So
and in fact, what happens here, though, is not even about that, really.
It really isn't. So that's what's fascinating about it. So he decided what he's going to do is his first initial meeting was going to be an intake meeting. And he always does these intake meetings across the desk in his office with patients. Which when you think about your experience with a dentist, you're almost always leaning back in a chair, feeling very vulnerable because you're in this odd posture. and you never really have the opportunity where you're kind of like eye to eye as peers with him. So he thought, well, let me kind of take away that status that I have because people are on their backs and I'm walking in, I'm standing over top of them, and let me allow this to be more of a peer-to-peer kind of conversation in the first one. So he has this 30-minute meeting where it's this eye-to-eye conversation with everybody. And the unintended consequence of that is that his patient retention, by the way, he's able to still say no to people when he notices, but his ability to retain patients is at a level that he never anticipated because of this practice that he's doing.
Yeah.
Like his ability to like know people and get to know them and have them in a more comfortable setting where he's talking. And he says they open up almost like he's a therapist, right?
Yeah.
In that kind of setting. Why more dentists don't do
how
this?
long does that initial conversation take?
It's about 30 minutes, really.
Yeah.
But it's
okay.
But the whole
payoff
intention of it is like, tell me about it. Tell me about your last dentist. Tell me about why you're coming to me. And so they open up to him in a huge way. Again, he was initially just looking for the idea of like, is this someone that I could have as a patient long term? But they do open up to him and they do talk to him. They completely unpack, right? When you say, and even today, when I was talking to my dermatologist, he was like, "How are things going?" And I just spilled out because he's a medical professional, I guess.
You started weeping.
I started talking about my cholesterol. Like, why do I?
He's handing you tissues.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So for Aaron to be able to say, "Let me actually do this and take advantage of this," for one reason, it actually had great unintended consequences in another reason.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, think about it in this way. I kind of feel like some leaders might be hesitant on this count. I'm doing a footnote here because I want to go back and see if you have any theory, by the way, on what are the markers of a high maintenance dental patient? Because I'm just curious on what that is. If you need to message anybody and find that out.
Yeah.
But there's an element here where, we talked about the field note about, do you think of your work team as family? And it's like, oh, you can't like kick people out of the family, but people get fired. You have professional relationships. And there's a lot of people who are like, I'm here. I like you. Let's do stuff. You're asking me about stuff, but we're not best friends, right? So there's an element there where a leader has to be kind of careful, where it's not just like, so tell me about how your relationship was with your father when you were in elementary school, right? Oh, my father was gone. It's like, really? It's like, we're not that. I don't think that's what we're advocating for. But the line gets a little bit tricky, right?
Yep, it does. And I'm the kind of person who likes to get into deep conversations very quickly. Like I don't do small talk as well as I should. And I go to deep talk maybe too fast, right? So there is a pacing there. And the kind of pacing that we're talking about, what leads to this being great for leaders to do for the sake of their team means that it might be months, maybe even years, where you kind of slowly warm up to the idea that it's okay for us to be able to talk about. And then there's a bit of a reset. Every time you have someone new come into the team, you kind of need to reset and build that back up slowly again. But providing a stage and an opportunity for those things to be unpacked is what's important here.
Yeah.
If you're not providing that stage, it's hard.
Yeah, and the overall motivation here again isn't to make you the leader, the therapist in chief. But the best leaders do know things about relationships. We have a whole module about this in our main platform, and I think we'd all be like, well, I grew up as a human being. I sort of know this. Yeah. But I think you and I can testify to the fact that in working with this content at Admired Leadership, it is so deep in my understanding of how relationships work, particularly for leaders, and probably in the way that I interact with my kids and other people as well, because we have lots of insights around how the best leaders cultivate relationships, around what kind of cadence, how they think about adding value, how even the sort of the time and duration and of kind of contact. Well, underlying that, what we know is that people do have certain things that are important to them. Obviously, they like to talk about their kids and maybe their hobbies, but there are other things. Like there's a geography that's important to people in some ways, and just finding out a little bit more about that. this kind of even goes to a general curiosity that you have about the other person. And so that's the question, which is, if you as a leader just had a little more curiosity, you were paying attention a little bit more, not something that's going to overwhelm or overload your day, would you start to see outsize benefits like your friend the dentist?
Yes. Yeah. I really do think that they are there. Because I like to have those kinds of conversations, I feel like even the relationships that I have with my colleagues from past jobs is at a point where it's very easy for me to pick up the phone and, and reach back out to I'm not looking for another job, but if I was suddenly in a spot where I was
you've maintained relationships because of cadence and interest and adding value when there's nothing transactional at play.
Right.
I was just at a conference where I was able to, and I knew people involved in this conference, and they had done this a couple of times in smaller settings. So the conference I went to was about 350 people, and this was about 2 weeks ago in the Chicago area. And this particular group, what they had tried out was where when everyone arrived, and this was true for this one, so I'll just describe this one. So 350 people arrived. Very first thing on the agenda is not like the opening keynote or a orientation. It was that they divided all 350 people into small groups of 8 to 10 people that became your cohort for the rest of the weekend. And there was a I think a Thursday evening event, but it was primarily an all day Friday, all day Saturday event. And so the rhythm was, you're going to meet not for a half an hour, for an hour and a half with these 8 people.
Wow.
Then there's going to be a plenary session. Then there was a panel. Then there was lunch. Then you went back to your group. Then there was a plenary, and then there was another panel. Then you went back to your group, right? So that there was this alternation. It went into the evening, and then people would get together. Now you would interact at the lunch or at the dinner with everybody that was in attendance. But in the meantime, what happened is you had 5, 6 touch points with that of the conversation with that group, and all people you didn't know. Right. So, and there's one moderator and again, the moderator's not very involved. They're experienced, and they're guiding a particular protocol that group uses. But it really kind of is, loosely, we'll just say it's like, well, why are you here? Like, what's the thing that brought you to this conference? What are you looking to accomplish? Tell us your story. What's the circumstance? You kind of go around the room. You put a topic out that you might want to talk about. People are like, I like that topic. And then, maybe one of them kind of rises to the surface. And then pretty soon, rather than like at most conferences where you might get to the second day at lunch and you've actually only really talked to 3 people, the person you happen to sit by, and maybe the person you were standing in lunch, to get, in line to get lunch. So that was a transformative thing. And you can duplicate that in all kinds of ways. Wouldn't it be cool if even at big conferences they did things like that were driven around, let's create conversation? Because it works in a conference. It's also the driving mechanism, because in one of our last firm meetings, we heard from a former president of YPO, the Young Presidents Organization, around, well, what binds people together there in the tens of thousands of people that they have that are members around the world, and they pay a lot of money to be on there, and nobody drops out. Like, it's a very small percentage number. It's that connection.
I think a lot of that is being willing to ask that why question. Right? Me being able to explain my purpose really makes me feel connected to the person who's going to listen to me doing that.
Right. For sure.
So like Aaron, the dentist, his questions are geared towards, let's see how this person complains about their previous dental experiences. Because if I can determine that they are just hopping from one dentist to the next, I don't want to be the next dentist that they just hop away from. I don't want that experience at all. And so he's got a very specific motive in how he asks his questions and why he asks his questions. But the fact that they open up to him leads to this other unintended consequences that are really good for him. So how we ask these questions and exactly what we're going for, there's probably a very specific, and I think we might not get to the why question early on in our relationships with people, but that's eventually where we're getting. I think being able to say, tell me your story. Why are you even here? Is great for people to articulate their purpose in life, much less their purpose for being at an office somewhere.
Well,
right?
if I lived in Phoenix now, and I'll give this example to close, which is I'd be the case study. So I had a longtime dentist who was very thorough. He was practicing into his 80s. If you went to go get a dental cleaning, you were there for an hour and a half to 2 hours. It was so thorough. It was amazing. Well, and he passed away at some point, and the practice was sold. And then there was a new dentist, and I saw that dentist, once or twice in that first year. And then it was like I never saw that dentist again. He was there, but he would send in the sub dentist, not the hygienist, but like I never had a connection to that dentist. And I realized after a while, these people I don't think they actually even know who I am. Like I don't think that they're really even paying attention.
And that made a difference to you.
Yeah,
as to
there was
whether or
always
not
So I went and I tried out a different dentist and didn't really have a great experience there. I went and tried out another dentist, didn't really have a great experience there. It was fine, just blah. And then I went to one, and I kind of liked that dentist, and so I stayed there for a year or two, and then she retired, or she decided, she wasn't at retirement age, decided to not practice anymore. So they just replaced her with another woman who came in from out of town, young woman, very nice, very professional, but I think that when I met her, and I'm not like, I doubt they're going to watch this, but like, I think she kept her mask on the whole time. Like, so I'm not even sure what she looks like.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's me. I've changed multiple dentists over the last 5 years. But if that dentist had said, come into my office, let's sit down. This is what we do. We do a 20-minute conversation when you first, kind of get to know each other. I think that would make all the difference.
Right. Yeah.
So we can all do that.
For someone like you who thinks about it, that would make a difference. But most people don't really think about it. And so all of a sudden, when you're in a great conversation that your leader has facilitated, where you're all talking about your purpose in life, I mean, that conversation just magic. Yeah. Transformational.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mikey.
All right. Thank you.
Shall we do this again tomorrow?
I think we shall.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
See y'all.
Bye now.